hands? That's like a baby's toy.
I'm totally Batman.
Hello everyone, this is Alexander Wolfgang from the Secondary Heroes podcast. I wanted to step in for a second because this is going to be a different episode. We partnered with our friends over at Nerdy Curious to do like a little bit of a, we wanted to kind of do reviews of older horror movies for the Halloween season. And the problem was, on our end, we ended up getting so busy, we really couldn't review an older movie. We did Halloween Ends, which is one of our latest episodes. But tonight, you'll be listening to Nerdy Curious review the 1960 horror flick called Peeping Tom. Now, our friends over at Nerdy Curious, I just wanted to go over real quick. They're bloggers, they're streamers, they're podcasters. On their stream, they stream on Twitch every week on Monday and Saturday at 5 o'clock Pacific time. Check them out; they're really fun. I've tuned into a few of their episodes, and I really do. I like their point of view, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. I did want to give a little disclaimer. I know the majority of our episodes are clean and we don't curse a whole lot. They may curse a bunch in this. That's okay. It's not a big deal. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this episode of Nerdy Curious reviewing Peeping Tom.
Insert awkward intro here.
Isn't that how we always do things?
I mean, it's only okay to remain on brand because that's what you're supposed to do, is be consistent.
Yeah, I vaguely remember reading that somewhere about being on social media and online in general. Be consistent.
I mean,
so we're consistently weird.
And awkward.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are just another cog in the wheel that is whatever horror month that Secondary Heroes is doing. We are at Nerdy Curious, as you can see by our banner, unless the boys get rid of that. I don't know what's going to happen with this editing situation. However, we are a podcast on Twitch. We are live Mondays and Saturdays with 2 different shows. And yeah, so we talk stuff. Come watch. We're also here on YouTube, so you can check out our archive and see if you actually want to partake. If not, that's totally fine. The guys approached us, and we've known them for a very, very, very long time. I'm Ronnie, by the way, and that's the lovely Rach.
Hello. I'm waving to anyone who's just listening. I'm waving. Hi.
Yeah, again, I don't know if this is going on their YouTube or if this is just audio. So we have no idea what's going on. We'll be very surprised. But yeah, so the guys approached us to talk about kind of a scary film for spooky season. And we've been on a classic spooky film kick for quite a while, actually. I want to say for about a year. Because we also did this kind of kick last year. So, and I think it was once I brought this up with the girls, Rach and I, it was like our immediate reaction was just like, let's do a classic film. So we are going to be covering Michael Powell's 1960, sometimes labeled as 61, debatable film, Peeping Tom. So, cult classic. If you haven't seen it, it's available on Tubi, on the Roku channel, and a variety of other places. So it should be readily accessible for you. Yes. So.
It's available in Canada too. Huzzah for me.
Yes. That's we always do that deep dive to make sure it's available both in the US and Canada, because otherwise we're all fucked. So, I should have asked the boys if I can curse on their channel. I did not.
I feel like they can duck it out.
I'll try to be better about it.
If you want to swear, just quack, and then we can move forward.
Okay. All right. I'll do my best to censor myself, because that's very difficult. But anyway, let's dive into the movie. All right. So, a general commentary on the film as a whole. Rach, what was your impression?
Okay, so this is the first time that I've seen it. I watched it 3 times since we decided that we were going to watch Peeping Tom for this particular podcast. And I really enjoyed it. Now, the first time I watched it through, I took notes, so I didn't really get to absorb the ambiance that is this movie. But the second time, where I was just, you know, watching it for the sake of watching it instead of, you know, critically thinking about it, it was a really well shot psychological thriller. I know that horror has specific genres within the genre, and personally I really like psychological horror because it messes with your mind a little bit, and it feels more real than something that's supernatural or kind of just like a fantasy horror. So this was totally up my alley. It had a lot of suspense in it. The point of view, which we're probably going to talk about in detail, was fascinating and really lends to the dramatic irony of that runs through the entire film, because, you know, I mean, you're in the killer's shoes, so you kind of know more than what the characters in the film know. And I love a good dramatic irony moment. So yeah, great acting across the board. The music was scary AF. The tension, it wasn't necessarily scary, the music itself, but like the tension that it creates, it sets the mood of each of the different scenes that you need that extra bit of, oh my god, it's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah,
absolutely.
I think for sure the acting was definitely something that stood out. All of the characters just really, it was like 110% of just acting your face off. So yeah, really enjoyed it. Highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. I like a good classic film. I feel like there's a artistry to classic films that isn't necessarily appreciated as much nowadays. So yeah.
I think what it is about classic films too, just generally speaking, is because they were establishing kind of the system that would be used in future to create a successful film, and a successful method of storytelling, that there's a purity to it. Because I think now it's a little bit more seen from the lens of, like, we're referencing so much stuff. It's really difficult to find something that feels original now. And back then, I mean, it was back then. It was, you know, it's all that OG flavor. So, and this film in particular, I feel it's a filmmaker's film. Like, there's countless of filmmakers, like classic filmmakers, what we consider classic filmmakers now, like Scorsese, Romero, Coppola. They all reference this fucking film because they saw it in film school, and so it was like a staple for them. Because it is a 60s film, so that kind of makes that checks. But yeah, so but you can kind of see when you sit down and watch it and you're a film geek, you can really see the references in it in thousands of movies that have come out since then. Not only in the genre, but especially in the genre. So it's just great to go back and watch. I personally was introduced to Peeping Tom because I was watching Turner Classic Movies like you do, 5 million years ago. I can't remember when, and they were doing a special on Michael Powell, and I had seen his other film, Red Shoes, in middle school, because I used to take dance and I used to do ballet, and it's a movie about ballet and blah blah blah. So I watched it. It's another psychological thriller, and it's another spooky, fantastic film. And so I was like, oh, I will watch something else by this man, I suppose, since they were talking about it on Turner Classic Movies. And then this came on, and I completely lost my shit. And I've been watching it almost annually ever since, which has been years and years. So yeah, it had been a while since I'd seen it, because you never know with these classic films too when they're going to be available and what streaming situation is going to be. So when we decided we were going to do it and we started searching to make sure that it was going to be available, I was like, yes, let's do this. So I did watch it a couple times just for a refresher. I remembered quite a bit of it because there's a lot of they're memorable moments, which I think it's going to be the next thing that we talk about. So Rachel, was like what are the memorable scenes for you?
Surprisingly, I think the one that really sticks out in my mind after watching it, actually for the third time really recently, is the scene with the mom, and it's interesting because I find it fascinating that she was kind of the one that initially instinctively knew, even though she was blind. And it makes sense because when you are missing one of your senses, your other senses become heightened to kind of compensate for that missing sense. And she instinctively knew. And it was just that juxtaposition of her not being able to see the films that he had made, but instinctively knowing more than even the investigators of the murders and like everybody else around Mark. It was just so good. That scene where she like touches his face and kind of like immediately figures out everything.
Yeah,
it's so beautifully done, and the actress did such an amazing job too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you bring up Helen's mom, because Helen's mom is, I feel like, probably the most iconic character in that film. She's very, very memorable, especially I feel like watching it from today's lens, because she is kind of like this juxtaposition to the ingenue, which again, classic trope in a horror movie. Like, you've got the monster and
the damsel,
but she's an ingenue. Like, she's innocent and brand spanking clean, and that's why he's fascinated by her. And she's the exception.
21.
Child.
They kept having to like put that boundary in. She's 21. At least she's 21, guys.
I know, right? It's like, it's okay. It's okay. They're into each other. It's like, yeah, okay. This is where it starts.
Exactly.
Which actually there is a lot of commentary on that we can touch on, because those are a couple of other scenes that stood out to me watching it now with today's lens versus me seeing it for the first time ages ago.
Right. The whole like predatory gaze of the camera in general is just, yes, it's kind of topical. Apropos. it's very we haven't gone very far, have we?
No, not at all. Or if anything, we're getting back to that.
Yeah.
In a more obvious way. So, but yeah, Helen's mom, I think they gave her my favorite line now, after watching it recently, has to be her and Helen talking about him. And they're having, just this discussion like any, mom and daughter do of like, are you being careful? Is he cool? Or, is everything okay? That kind of thing. And her mom says, I don't trust a man that walks quietly. Best fucking line ever.
It's excellent life advice, if I do say so myself.
Absolutely. Why are you gonna hang out with a creeper? Don't walk too softly, guys. Do the stomping. I'm quite a stomper myself. I've come to realize this about myself. I do not have a soft step. But yeah, no, it's a wonderful line that just kind of it hits. We're like, yeah, of course he would have a quiet step. That makes absolute sense. Like the predator that he is.
Yeah. He's always in the background, he's not the center of attention until the end, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah. But yeah, on the predatory kind of lens, some of the elements are quite obvious. Like they're at this somewhat start of the film when we see the convenience store. I found that particularly strong because the gents are coming in there to get their pornography, their nudity contraband, shall we say, because that's the secondary business that's going on at this convenience store, which Mark happens to be a photographer for. So he takes the naughty pics for the owner of said convenience store, and they sell them under the table to the customers. And there's this almost sickening thing that happens where a little girl comes in to buy candy.
Oh yeah, that was.
And the interaction is happening, the sales interaction is happening, and I just got so uncomfortable, and that didn't hit like that before.
That was the ickiest part of the. I mean. Yeah. Minus the whole murdering. Let's get that straight. That particular scene made me so uncomfortable. I actually physically remember having to pause the video and going, I don't know if I can watch the rest of this film.
Yeah.
Because it was just so gross. It just made me feel like I needed a shower. It was, ugh.
Right. Yeah. And that's honestly what's great about it from the perspective of the film getting made, because this is all Michael adding onto this commentary. Because again, if we want to talk about the very, very opening scene, we're opening on a very a gorgeous shot of a very moody night in London, because this is a UK story. Mm-hmm. And the way the ambiance of the street and everything, the way that it opens, you're already behind the camera. You're already in Mike's shoes. And I said Mike, I meant Mark. It works either way.
It does.
But anyway,
director's shoes. It works.
Yes, you're in Mike's and Mark's shoes. But it's again, it's a gorgeous shot of a very moody London, and you come across a lady of the night, and it immediately kind of gives it's funny because the second she starts walking down the alley to take him back to her place, it immediately gives Ripper vibes. So if anyone is kind of instinctually already in the zone, you kind of already make the connection of what's about to happen. Right. But it does kind of reference back to this historical serial that's relevant to the country. But again, it's all very, very uncomfortable. But the opening kill shot with this lady is a very iconic opener, and it's beautifully done because you're just seeing her reaction and you have no idea what's happening. You don't know what he's actually doing, but it's enough that it's scaring her to death, basically. And it is interesting once you actually realize what the weapon that's used. It's quite. It's odd. it's an odd choice, but also kind of genius. But I think it speaks to exactly what Michael's doing with this film, which is showing the audience a reflection of themselves and how frightening that is. When you actually take a closer look. And I feel like that was the whole point of this film, and that kind of social commentary and just like the perversity of certain things. I haven't done enough reading or research to know exactly what Mike had in mind from his like talking points or anything like that, because there was just so much controversy when this film came out. But that's what I took from it, and I think that was my personal assessment of why there was so much controversy when this film came out, because I don't think anybody likes having a mirror put up to them and them seeing all of their flaws all at once. Like, this is why society's broken.
Yeah, I agree, because like I think the whole premise of the film was there was a film within a film, so we're looking at life within life in the movie, but also the reflection of what we should be taking a look at in terms of society. And so I think that's where the true discomfort came from. It wasn't the murders themselves. It wasn't how creepy it was to be put in the seat of the murderer, but the fact that I think society has very dark parts that really need to be taken a closer look at, which is what that's why it's so uncomfortable to watch it.
Right.
So I think he did a really good job at that, and if you don't feel uncomfortable watching, there's something definitely wrong with you.
Well, I mean, considering today's lens and today's thresholds with the spooky variety of films, it may be considered spooky light nowadays.
Because
so it's not like
the omission of gore, you mean? Or
the omission of gore, because you don't necessarily see there's no actually,
because it's not necessary.
Yeah, it's not necessary. It's just the idea of it or what have you. But yeah, I mean, well, it's similar to like Hitchcock, where like a lot of people probably nowadays consider Hitchcock pretty spooky light, but it just wasn't needed back then. Plus, I don't think the audiences could have handled it back then. But from a psychological aspect, I think if you sit down and you watch these and you start making connections and all of that stuff, then, but it takes a different style of watching, I suppose, than what we're used to now. I think we enjoy it because we like to connect dots and solve puzzles, hence our name, Nerdy Curious. But that was an unintentional plug. I didn't plan it. but yeah, I think that if you just sit down and you watch this just to watch it, it's enjoyable for sure. But it's going to be really, really difficult for you not to kind of tie certain things, especially if you are a horror spooky fan. And in referencing that, like back to that opening scene, the absolute parallel to that scene is the original Halloween, which we've talked about many a time, because Jamie, one of our other NC members, and I are completely obsessed with Mikey. Another Mike. Jeez, there's too many Mikes to talk about today. but yeah, so we've talked at length about, you know, being in the position of the camera and being in the position of the killer, and just I feel like probably anyone born in the 70s, 80s, that the getting behind the camera and being in the person's shoes, Halloween was probably your introduction to that in the spooky realm. And that came from this, from Peeping Tom. So Peeping Tom is the OG.
Yeah, those opening 2 minutes is pretty spectacular for a film.
Yeah, you know what you're getting yourself into. That's for sure.
Yeah, it sets the scene.
It sets the scene. I think what I liked so much about Peeping Tom, though, in comparison to that treatment being used in Halloween, is that it's more consistently done in Peeping Tom. Mm-hmm. So you get that discomfort at the start, and then every time he kills, you get that discomfort.
It carries through.
It carries
entirety
through
of the movie.
The entirety of the thing, and that's something. I'd like to see more of that done. You know, I'd like to see a film do that and carry it through, updated to now. It might push some boundaries though, because you would actually have to see what's being done. That would push that threshold, because I don't think any filmmaker nowadays would pull back from that the way that this one did in the 60s, just due to the censorships. I don't think that they would. I think we would be seeing blood and guts and all that jazz if they did it now.
And I don't know. I don't know if that would necessarily work. I know that I have a very different threshold for horror, and I feel like the fact that Peeping Tom had so much restraint was what made it scary. Because it's not the blood and gore and guts of the actual murders. That wasn't the point.
Yeah.
He wasn't killing for that reason, so it made sense for this film, the way that the murders were shown. And
sure.
Again, your imagination's always going to be a little bit more crazy than what any director can put in front of you, so it automatically just makes every kill kind of more intense that way, because you know you're not going to actually see it, but it builds up to that moment where he takes a life.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, and it's more my cup of tea. I don't think I would necessarily find it pleasant having to sit through actually watching what's happening, but it's similar to a lot of the arguments going on now, or I shouldn't say arguments, I should say commentary that's happening now, of people complaining about some restraints being shown over some recent releases of the violent nature. And as inappropriate as some of those comments have been with the particular subject matter that was released, because it was actually based on true crime, I feel like that is part of the desensitization. Wow. Of it's Saturday. Of society, maybe processing that style and that story in the same way that we're processing this story. For them to actually appreciate the discomfort of it is to actually see the blood get on your hands behind the camera. And I feel like that would be the direct mirroring of today's society, because there's a lot of blood in real life happening on a daily basis. So yeah, but I get it, and I agree, because it's, again, on the fictional end, this is more my cup of tea. But and I honestly don't think I'd be able to stomach, because we've talked about this. My threshold does not consist of consuming anything that directly shows violence against women. So if this was an updated take nowadays and they were to actually show it, I don't think I could probably watch it. But it'd be an interesting thing. It'd be an experiment.
It would be.
Yeah.
On whether the entire vibe actually checks for the entire film. If something, if different choices were made.
Yeah.
And personally, I don't think it would for me.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see if there hasn't been any talks or anything like that of anyone doing either, like, not necessarily a revamp or whatever, but and I'd rather them not. But if they were to take an original story and adapt certain takes and treatments from this film, it would be an interesting filmmaking experiment, at least to me. But yeah, so any other scenes that really popped out to you?
Aside from any scene with the mom, I feel like she really stole the movie for me, and the opening couple of minutes. I'm trying to think.
Well, here, I'll feed you one. One of the iconic killing scenes for me, besides the opener, is the one that he had with Vivian.
The dance sequence was pretty
yes.
epic. I feel like she nailed that dance sequence.
Yes.
Because
so,
I think what's great about that scene in particular is the fact that she has no idea what's about to happen to her, and you know that it's coming, you just don't know when it's coming. Because when she first steps onto the studio stage, you think this is it, this is what's gonna go down, but then it completely turns, and she's like, can I, like, you know, get ready, and she puts on this really happy music, and that to me was just like, oh no. It's like watching a baby lamb get slaughtered, right? It was awful, but also, like, she's a really good dancer.
Yes. So Moira Shearer was probably the most well-known actor of this film, and she was a longtime friend of Michael's, the director, and she was the star of The Red Shoes, which was his first big successful film. And again, another psychological horror film, the way that I meant. If y'all need to watch that one, that one's very, very, very good. There is a lot of dancing, though. It's kind of like a spooky musical. But yeah, so I feel like he had to kind of give more the just dance, girl. Just dance around, do some stuff. And then we're gonna kill you. But yeah, it was one of my favorite scenes, and it was just good to see her. It's kind of cool. Like we see a lot of these directors nowadays kind of working with their favorite cast members over and over again. Yeah, it's just like, this is like such a Flanagan move. It's like, just keep using the same actors over and over and over again. So yeah, it was just cool to see anyone who had seen The Red Shoes. It was just cool to see Moira again, and like, you already did her dirty in The Red Shoes, man. Why are you gonna? But yeah, no, like I particularly liked hers, and just the uncomfortability of seeing Mark kind of like stalking her and doing his little preparations while she's just dancing away and being like the joyful thing that she is, and the fact that she specifically tells him that he puts her at ease, that he makes her comfortable, and that he's so easy to talk to, and all of this stuff. And she's just like, that she can't get in the correct headspace of being scared, because she's just so at ease at him, and asks him, almost begs him, to put her in the correct frame of mind for her to do this scene. And it's just like, I don't even know. I think it's a lot of commentary to like toxic relationships in general. Because it's like, you know, you're in it and you know someone is toxic as fuck, and yet you're still there.
Well, I mean, she was just so blissfully unaware because she just seemed, like you said, like, I mean, she basically comes out and goes, I'm so comfortable with you. Like, yeah. and he's just standing there, and you know what's gonna happen, and you're just like, oh no, you poor thing.
Yeah. Anyway, there are certain things too where it's just like, I think that particular one of like just kind of like the innocence of being with someone that you trust and then that person completely taking advantage of it is another thing that kind of, it triggers me just a little bit, because I feel like it's a portrayal of an innocence of and almost like stupidity of women, but it's not. But that's just it. That's part of like the stigma that kind of goes with victim blaming, you know, that has been like shoved down our throats for ages. That just bothers me a bit, but she's just living her life and minding her own, and is thinking that she's getting this opportunity to be a breakout star because she's like a background actor or something like that for this film that they're both working on this set that they're both working on. And yeah, she's just innocently doing her thing, and he's there just like, oh, no one's gonna miss her. We're just, you know, I'm just gonna do my thing and get it done and put her in this fucking trunk that he was measuring while she was dancing around. Like, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. That dark juxtaposition to me is just, I mean, it's great for filmmaking purposes. I think it's just a stunning display.
It's beautiful.
It's like this back and forth. It's like a dance. He's dancing to a different song than she is, but it's still a dance. And so it makes it that much more heartbreaking, because you know it's coming. You know that she's in a situation that she won't get out of. And you know, again, those parallels to like society. It's dark. It's super dark and uncomfortable, and I think that's the whole crux of this film, is that each of those moments that Michael has crafted is just a very stark realization of, this is society. This is what happens. This isn't just a film situation between two people. This is something that is societally a problem. And you know, I don't think people really understand that until you like kind of really like dig deep, and after watching it a few times you kind of start seeing like, oh, this has nothing to do with a guy murdering women for this documentary he's filming because he's like, you know, psychologically damaged by his dad. Like, it's a big camera on humanity as we are. So and that's why I like psychological horror, because it's rooted in reality, and you walk out of it going, oh wow, as a species we're messed up.
I mean, I don't know what the statistics were back then on the because now we all know that the majority of the cases where women are attacked is usually by somebody that they know, because it's just opportunity and proximity and closeness, and whenever a chick feels comfortable with somebody, that's usually the problem. Well, you know, not with everybody, but you know, to those exceptional few. But so I don't know what the statistics were back then in the 60s, but it's incredible commentary now, because again, the relevancy of this film, not much has changed, so yeah, it's just it's pretty insane. Another treatment too that I feel is often used in film now is the scene with Helen. Well, most of the scenes with Helen, because again, she's like this bright-eyed, bushy-tail prey. And you find yourself obviously talking like, girl, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. But she inspires the softer side of him and is able to almost tame certain urges that he normally has with other people. And so you do find yourself kind of hoping that he can pull through and have her be the exception. And you can kind of see him fighting this urge that he gets. And he does tell her mom in a scene that never her. She will never be, you know, in front of the camera. And he tells her the exact same thing, that he will never be have her in front of the camera. Because I love the scene where she holds it and she points it at herself and he immediately takes it from her. And yeah, so I think there's something there too where a filmmaker tries to have you rooting for the bad guy or trying to appeal to the humanity part of said bad guy. I'm not necessarily opposed to the concept when used on fictional characters. We've talked about this at length, about trying to do that with true crime stories and serial killers. I do not need to empathize with these sickly motherfuckers, okay? I don't. Oops, I did it again. Sorry, guys, if you don't accept the cursing. You may have to bleep that one out as well. Yeah, so as a fictional storytelling tool, I suppose I will accept it. But it never works. It's a waste of time. It never works, especially when it's someone who's killing multiple people. But I mean, you hope. It gets you hoping. But alas,
yeah,
you can't really buy his name.
There was no hope because it was just like, you straight up killed a whole bunch of people. I'm sorry, but either you end up dead or end up in jail. That's the only two options that make the most sense for me. Otherwise, there's no justice served, and this movie would have been pointless. But but yeah, you kind of saw where his arc was going to go. There were redemptive moments, for sure. Yeah. And I feel like, you know, it's hard not to sympathize because of the fact that there is so much trauma.
Sure.
With him losing his mother young, with his dad being a psychotic scientist. I don't even want to like label him as a scientist. He was just a crazy person. So you kind of like, he had no chance almost, you know? Like there was no way he was going to get out of that situation unscathed, and it just kind of adds to the sadness of his entire like arc. But I still felt the rage of like, you were just killing people, you know. This is not great.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was a mix of emotions in regards to that, because of the first time I saw it, I was relatively young. And again, you do have that thing in the back of your mind of like, you're watching an old movie, because it's a movie from the 60s. So you don't necessarily know, unless you're really familiar with the time period and how certain films were done, you don't necessarily know which direction he's going to go. Because now we're very justice-based. So it's just like, there's only two options here, buddy, as Rach said. But you don't know if they're going to try to pull some sort of, you know, sunshiny, optimistic sort of thing, because people were more optimistic back in the day. Not Mike.
Nope. Nope. He was like, yeah, no, there's no happy ending here.
No. He was like, there's no redemption. What redemption do you speak? Yeah. So, yeah. He did good, because you're right. There's I mean, realistically speaking, this, and I think that's probably why this movie holds up as much as it does nowadays, because there are only two options. It would have been fucking weird if they would have tried to do this sort of redemptive situation. Like, yes, Helen and Mark could live happily ever after, and he'll never kill again.
No, that's not how this works.
No.
That's not how real life works.
Yeah. And we're not gonna spoil the bigger bits. Like, we're not gonna tell y'all what the weapon that was used, and we're not gonna talk about who survives and who doesn't. So you'll have to watch.
You have to watch
see
and be uncomfortable
if Helen
in
survives.
a lot of scenes. There's a lot of discomfort.
Lots of discomfort. Yeah. Trying to think, what else should we talk about? You should see my notes. My notes are all like simple one-line things, like Ripper vibes, the crosshair motif of the camera. Pervy old man. I like my notes. Let's see. Another memorable scene when he's photographing the girls that are modeling for the shopkeep, and he gets fascinated by the one chick that has the disfigurement on her face. Like, what an odd thing. Like, because I feel like all of that kind of happens before you realize what all of his psychological trauma that happened, and you're just like, okay, there's something seriously wrong. And what is this? A strange fascination, but it's like all of these little beautiful nuggets that Mike just kind of lays down for you to just start asking more questions and be genuinely curious about this man and why he's doing the things that you do. And I think that's part of the reason of why people got so uncomfortable with this film and watching this film, because they didn't want to be in the mind of this man, and they didn't want to understand why this man was doing the things that he was doing. And again, it's all about that lens and forcing people to do these uncomfortable things. And the audience was like, nay, we shan't. But I enjoy it, so.
Yeah, I agree in that those little moments in the film kind of fills out Mark's character in a way. And it's just like little shots here and there. There's like little behavioral things that they just capture, and it's like barely a couple seconds on screen, but it just fills in his entire being as a person. Oops, I just got a phone call, so that's what you're hearing. So yeah, it was just, I liked those little kind of like blips of just, oh, this is what makes him tick. This is, obviously left over from the trauma of his father, and it was just, I thought it was a really great way to kind of character build without having to say it out loud.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, did you want to reference or talk about anything else specific to the film before we shift our gears to do a brief chat on Mike?
No, I mean, I feel like the entire way that it's filmed really lives up to the name Peeping Tom, because you feel like you're a voyeur in Mark's life, because you have like this lens on him and trying to figure him out and what is making him do these crazy things, and like you're looking into the lives of the people around him, and also kind of like what Michael's view on the world was as well. So it was like a inception of looking at things through a specific lens, which I thought was really fascinating on a whole.
Absolutely. You should definitely check out Red Shoes. I think you'd enjoy it.
It is on the list.
Yeah. It's from 48. I'm assuming it's probably in all the same places where we streamed this one, because if this one's available, the other ones have to be available too.
But hoping so. It's difficult to find.
I'm hoping so.
A lot of the classic stuff readily available on streaming services. If I have to rent it, I'll just rent it.
It's worth it. It's absolutely stunning. I mean, he's a really visual master. He is for sure. Just the way he sets up the scenes and stuff. But a little insight on the film. And again, guys, we highly recommend, if it's not obvious already, we recommend you watch Peeping Tom. So go watch that and then come back, so we can give you some little insight, because I feel like this insight, it's not necessarily spoilery, but it definitely adds to the experience, because you watch it and you inevitably will enjoy it and think, why don't I know this man's name as much as, let's say, a Hitchcock? And the reason that Hitchcock is usually brought up with Mike at the same time is because, one, they were friends and they were making films around the same time. And they fed off of each other quite a bit and inspired each other. And that's me putting it in kind of like a PC way, because I have my own thoughts on Hitchcock. But Mike went first. So Peeping Tom was released, and he did a press release first. Big mistake. And he did his release in London. And so the press fucking massacred it. Shit, I did it again. Guys, sorry. I'm trying really hard not to curse. It's not working. So they massacred the film. Reviews were awful. And again, this was the press. This wasn't even like the public watching it. The press reacted very poorly to Peeping Tom. And so once the press reacted poorly to it, hardly anyone wanted to watch it. And so this film didn't get its fair shake once it was released. And to juxtapose that, Psycho was released, if I remember correctly from reading, it was like 2 months later or something like that. And Hitchcock had used Powell's release of Peeping Tom as kind of a blueprint of what not to do. So he brought Psycho over to the States and did a viewing with the public in New York. And there were a lot of very similar treatments in that film. Like the classic Psycho scene where we're seeing the murder of Janet Leigh's character in the shower is basically the same style that we're seeing in Peeping Tom. Granted, not continuously done the way it is in Peeping Tom, but it's still the same treatment. We're behind the camera. We're seeing it actually happening. We're actually seeing more in Psycho than we are in Peeping Tom, like, because you actually see the blood running down the drain. You see the knife. You see her struggling and all of that jazz. We hardly get any of that in extended periods in Peeping Tom. However, Psycho went on to be a very successful film, and we're constantly talking about Hitchcock and his influence on the genre and such. Powell went first, and it was all just due to the critics and the audience in that kind of system of release, which is a travesty to me. He was basically blacklisted. This basically ruined his career. He wasn't given the opportunity to do much more after that. Like, he did a number of things, but it was never like he was lauded as this big deal after Black Narcissus and Red Shoes, because it was all very creative treatment. and everyone was kind of raging about it. But Peeping Tom basically kind of put a stop to a lot of it, and it's very unfortunate because, again, for someone else, for another filmmaker to release something very, very similar, and then having that be lauded for this big, huge, groundbreaking treatment, and a father to slasher films and other like horror things. Technically, it was Mike, but again, it's all circumstantial, and it's very, very unfortunate, and they just kind of showcases just how unfair the industry is, just based off of how things are done. So if he had simply not had a press release and maybe had shown it to a live audience, but maybe had done it stateside, because we all know at the time too in the UK the audience was a bit more prudish with certain things, but we don't know. We don't know what the impact would have been. But my guess is if they had done it stateside, it would have been a huge thing. It would have been a completely different career for him if he had released it differently. Which is just, again, it's unfortunate to think how much other things he could have done. And he wasn't given the opportunity to, because people thought that this was too much. It's just sad to me.
Yeah. Unfortunately, hard work and talent does not equate success in Hollywood, and so this is just another unfortunate situation that the industry didn't tip in his favor. And to bring it back, Peeping Tom was released in April and Psycho was released in June, so literally 2 months.
2 months. I mean,
2 months.
it's, you know what?
If that isn't irony in all of its glory, I don't know what is.
It makes me angry. It just makes me, because look, here's the other thing too. I don't know much about Michael Powell in like from personal aspects of him, because again, he did disappear, but he didn't work as much after that, so because he wasn't given the opportunity to. But from all the stuff that I had read, he's a relatively nice man. Hitchcock, not so much. There's a lot of shit out there, talking about how he was just a giant douche and was really, really bad to his stars, and a whole number of things. Just the abuse that Tippi Hedren had to endure to film Birds is just, I mean, Melanie Griffith still like, I think wrote about it too, because that's her mom. But it angers me. Because again, it's the industry, and so on and so forth. But that we cannot, I mean, that's a whole other can of worms. But again, I feel like it's one of those kind of like film history things that's just interesting to know, just to note, because I don't know how many cases are like that there are, of just having two pieces from the same genre that are inspired by each other. And, well, I shouldn't say each other. I should say one is inspired by the other. But anyway, being released and, again, just glamorized, just being like this classic film that everyone references. And this one's basically almost forgotten, except by, a fair few who are either in the industry and appreciate it for the artistry, are studying film and are forced to learn about it, just because, again, I feel like it is one of those stories of just interest for anyone who's in the industry to learn about. Is a spooky fanatic and came across it, and so on and so forth. But the layperson's not gonna know about Mike or about this film. So I think it's important to get it out there, and shed light on it, and posthumously at least he'll get some attention and some praise for the work that he did in the genre, really, because he is, I feel like Peeping Tom is the start of the slasher subgenre of the spookies. I think a few people have had that take, but that's definitely my take, that I think this particular film and Mike are the fathers of the slasher film. So this guy and Jason and Michael and Leatherface should be thanking Michael, because they all stem from that. So that's the take.
Yeah. I mean, I think with a lot of great art that doesn't get appreciated during its time, that gets appreciation later on, I feel like that's just a testament to the vision and the creativity that was put into that original piece of art, that it took some time for people to discover and appreciate it. And it's too late now for the people that were involved, but I think there's some justice in that.
Yep.
If people appreciate it now, or if you know about it, to spread the love to other people who may not necessarily know about it.
Yep. And it's a fun watch. It goes by very fast. I do think it's a fast watch, and you're in it. Like the time just flies, and there aren't really any slow spots, because I feel like every conversation that takes place in the film is, you feel like you have to really pay attention because it'll give you some insight to something. There's a whole sequence where Mark is trying to kind of find a solution to his issue, and he goes and talks to a psychiatrist or psychologist that's working on with the detectives on the case of one of the murders, and he's hopefully trying to find this answer to his issue, and it's just like, no, dude, that's not no, dude. But it's
too late.
Yeah, but it's all just very, very fascinating. So again, just watching the sequence of events unfold is masterful storytelling. So it's worth a watch. So again, Peeping Tom, 1960. You can find it on Tubi, Roku channel, and a bunch of other streaming services. I would recommend purchasing it and just having it in your collection of films, because it's definitely worth a rewatch. I feel like that's definitely something on my list of things to do, because having watched it for the first time decades ago, and I do mean decades ago, and rewatching it now, I feel like it's one of those films where your sense of it and the way that you interpret it will be highly influenced by your current surroundings and circumstances, and societal circumstances when you watch it. So it's an ever-evolving experience, I feel. So worth having. But yeah. Any last thoughts, Rach?
Nope, I think we said it all. Go watch
All right.
Peeping Tom.
How long is it? Do you have the note open, like how long it is, so people know?
It's an hour and 40-ish minutes.
It's longer than I thought.
Yeah.
It feels really short.
There is not a wasted frame.
No. It's
It
fucking
is-
stunning.
Yeah, it gets you from the opening seconds of the movie. It sustains you for the rest. I mean, there's a great shot in the beginning of Mark's eye, which kind of sets the whole mood of the entire film. And all the actors just, they put everything they had into their roles. Beautifully casted. every shot is like a still artwork. Like it's a really great psychological thriller, and
Yep.
you know, there's a lot of uncomfy moments, and I think that's kind of the point. So watch it.
Yep.
Watch it.
It's great. I need to rewatch it again for the spooky season. So,
So yeah,
all right, guys.
that's it from us. A big
Yeah.
thank you to the Secondary Heroes for
Mhm.
asking us to do this. I hope we get to do it again next year. I think it's super fun to kind of take a deep dive into a movie that Ronnie really hyped up and recommended, and I think it lived up to the expectations. So I'm looking forward to what other spooky stuff we're gonna get into next year, even though we're still in the spooky season right now, but it's slowly winding up, and it kind of makes me a little sad. But
Yeah, it's never long enough.
it isn't. And we always
No.
just start earlier and earlier every year. So, I mean,
We do.
maybe at
Right.
some point we're just not going to be nerdy curious. We're going to be spooky curious all year long. And you'll get sick of us talking about all the spooks, but
No,
it's something
never.
that we're just, you know, we're passionate about. Some more than others.
Yeah. But yeah, so guys, we're at Nerdy Curious all over the damn place. If you want to come give us a follow, literally all over the damn place, we're at Nerdy Curious. So Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, all the social medias, we're at Nerdy Curious. So just come stalk us
Yes.
in a non-weird way,
Yes. And if
in
you're
a non-peeping Tom way.
yeah, don't there's a line when it comes to stalking. Don't cross it. Please.
Yeah.
And be sure to follow and subscribe to the Secondary Heroes podcast.
Indeed.
They're amazing guys, and we've been friends, like Ronnie said, for a while, and it's fun to chat things nerdy with the people around us. So if you like, they do a lot of recaps on the Disney Plus stuff. So if you're a big Marvel fan, if you're a big Star Wars fan, check out their podcast.
All the thumbs up.
Anyways,
All right.
we'll talk to you guys later. Stay curious. Bye.
Bye.